What's going on, good people? Welcome back to another episode of the Trading Challenge. Today is day number 11, April the 24th, 2023. We made some trades today, so let's get into it. So, coming into today's session, my goal was to trade the setups that I know and to trade the setups that I know the proper way. So, first, let's talk about these lines that I have on the chart. So, this orange line down here represents Thursday's closing price. That level is 33,919. This purple level up here represents Friday's closing price, and that number is 33,948. So coming into the open, let's start at 9:30 this morning. We had this huge spike to the upside. So for the market to open that way, that showed us exactly what the buyer's intentions were for the rest of the session, and that will make a big difference, these prices up here, a little bit later on. So after that, we sold off really quick all the way back down to Friday's closing price. Notice how we made a higher low off of Friday's closing price, and then we continued to move up, and we eventually established support down here. Now I went short at trade one, expecting for this candle right here to hold up as resistance and to have a push back into the support level from Friday, and then I wanted to see prices move to the upside. So that was my rationale behind trade one, but the only thing is, as my trade notes say, I initially shorted it, but I was too hesitant to hold it all the way down to my target level. So that was a mistake by me. That's a problem that I had last week also, which was just believing in the setups that you take. If you take the setup and you believe in it, you gotta hold it and accept the risk that's gonna come with it. You have to. So then that led me to trade number two, which was more of a mistake and continuation from trade one, because I saw my trade from trade one starting to work. Then I started to chase it on trade two and eventually ended up taking a loss on that. So that's just a mistake by me. If I have a bad trade, I need to learn how to just let it go. It's plenty of opportunity throughout the rest of the day. So that's a lesson that I learned right there on trades one and two. So eventually prices moved up off of support that created this higher low right here. And then once they came back and touched the trend line at point 0.3, that's where I went long. So I don't have it drawn on here, but if you were to take a trend line and connect it from this bottom at this candle throughout this bottom right here, you would eventually have your trend line come back to where trade number three is. So eventually it ended up being a profitable trade, but once it goes a certain amount, I move my stop back up to break even. And if that stop comes back and gets hit, I usually don't like to get back into that trade again. So that's what happened right here at three, and I'm glad I made that decision. So eventually we saw prices pull back, and they respected this bear trend line, which was interesting because we had the higher lows steadily increasing throughout the session, but we also had lower highs at the top, which really created more of a symmetrical triangle. So whenever you see a symmetrical triangle, it represents a period of indecision in the market. So even if all of these trend lines weren't up here, we could see that from this candle right here all the way until this one right here, the market was pretty much stuck in a small range. Look at all of these candles and look at how the bodies are just extremely small, extremely small. They might have wicks that poke out, but they always close with a small body. So that's showing you that the market is very undecided and is trying to figure out which way it wants to go. So at trade four, I ended up taking a short trade because I thought that this overall bearish trend line would hold up, which it did for a second. Like I was up 10 points in profit, but when I had an opportunity to move my stop to break even, I didn't do it. And then I watched prices eventually give me back all of my gains and then end up for a loss at this top right here from the wick that got established on the last retest of the bearish trend line. So that was just a mistake on my part, just sloppy trading. I had opportunities to close that trade for a profit or at least for break even, and I squandered those opportunities both times. So I think that's just a small detail that I have to work on, just being more, I guess, being more quick with my decisions. Don't sit there in fear and look frozen when you see the market moving against you. You got to make a decision and be ready. So I think the lesson for this trade is don't be indecisive. Whatever you decide to do, follow through. And also, I think even though the entry was good, I think overall, when you have a symmetrical triangle, you want to more so wait for the market to show you what it wants to do before you hop in. because look at what happened after trade 4. Prices came back to the bottom trend line, the rising trend line, and created another higher low. So that's telling us that since the market opened, we've had 1, 2, 3 higher lows and 3 touches of the trend line. So that's telling us that even though there is some selling in the market, the overall trend is pushing to the upside. So once I realized that, I flipped my bias and I didn't go short again for the rest of the session, and all my trades after this were long. So let's talk about trade number 5. So when prices came back to retest the trend line once again and create another higher low, once they pushed off of that and they made that bounce, that's where I went long at trade number 5. Now this trade also ended up for break even, but that's okay for me. Now let's talk about my break even rule. So I told you before that usually if my trade is break even, I don't get back into that move. I would say 80% of the time, that's usually what I do. Now the other 20% of the time, if prices spike through my break even stop and then spike right back up through immediately after and continue in the direction of the trend that was originally occurring, then I'll hop back into that trade and take that same trade from the entry that I got it from before. So that's what happened at trade 6. I went long when prices spiked back through my entry price in trade 5, and then I just held prices all the way back up to this resistance level that we created from the beginning of the morning when we had that initial spike off of the open. So for trade 6, I would say that's probably my representation of what I want most of my trades to look like. I want to wait for the trend to be clearly established. I want to trade in line with the trend, and I want to hold my trade until they reach their profit target. So I think today, man, it wasn't a bad day, but it definitely wasn't a good day. It was a lot of mistakes that I feel like it was just sloppy. I don't want to give any excuses. I just wasn't on my game like I should have been, but that's something I can definitely work on tonight going into my back testing session. So I want to focus more on trade 6 and how to make all of my trades like trade 6 and trade 5, because I think those were really good entries. Trade 3 as well, and trade 1. So I think overall, if I'm able to clean up my mistakes, I could have out of these 6 trades, these maybe 4 of them could have probably been profitable, had a break even stop on a couple of them, so at least 3 out of 6 would have been profitable, and that would have allowed me to end the day in the green. So got some things to work on going into tonight's back testing session, and that's what I'm focused on tonight. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in with me today. Today is day 11. I'll be back tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. sharp for day number 12, and until then, take it easy.